Hi guys, hope you're enjoying the festive time. Well, at least in India, please don't forget to study a little bit at least. Yeah. So we'll start today's webinar with an important announcement. I'm sure you would have heard about it as well, but in any case, and I have a few strategy points to discuss as well. So just bear with me. Yeah. So first and foremost, the last date for GMAT, the classic version, the current version, is 31st of January next year, of course, 2024. So then we have about 3 months, a little more than 3 months. So now our strategy is clear, right? Now we know exactly what we need to do. So in case you have been preparing for GMAT for quite a while, strategy is there, all the various types of questions, you've invested yourself in it, you've invested time, a lot of time in sentence correction, geometry, etc. as well. I would suggest you to take the conventional GMAT if possible, work really hard for the next 2 months, give it your all, and take the conventional GMAT once at least. Yeah, do not wait for the end of January because then slots may not be available at that time in any case. But then try to schedule something as early in January as possible. Yeah. In case you are starting out, or in case you feel that your next attempt of GMAT will happen, let's say after 2-3 months, then switch now, right? When anyway we know that we don't have that time, so then switch now. Forget about sentence correction, forget about geometry. Well, for the most part, again, there are like some parts of it, the coordinate geometry parts of it, not all of it, but some parts which are there in GMAT Focus also. But of course, most of it, your triangles and everything, they're all gone. So forget about that and start working on GMAT Focus. Look, it is going to be a little bit of a different test, right? The strategy required will be a little different. So then might as well start working on that, right? So at least this timeline now has brought in a very clear strategy for us. We know exactly what we need to do, right? Okay, now there are a few other things that I would like to discuss. Yeah, and also don't worry about the pros and cons of now GMAT versus GMAT Focus. Doesn't matter. This is a strategy that you should use. Now, if you have the time, if you've been working for it, take at least one last shot at GMAT, give it your all. It's a well-established test, right? So of course there is no downside to it, obviously, right? GMAT Focus is going to be new, but of course it is the future. So then there is no downside to either. We'll just, depending on the time that we have, depending on where we are right now, we'll decide to take one or the other. Yeah. In case there are any doubts, you would like to give me ask some personal advice, in case depending on your situation, just write to admin@anaprep.com, right? And I'll let you know what you should do in these circumstances. Okay. Now, one thing now, yeah. GMAT Focus has become a lot more industry relevant. In fact, this is something that GMAT has been driving towards for a few years now. I don't know if many of you know, but then some time ago, GMAT Club touched that 100K subscribers, and then they held a live event where we were all discussing and chatting about our experience and stuff. So there, Shovik was mentioning how a lot of his recruiter friends, they were complaining about lower performance among the interns being hired now, yeah, by the companies that go to the top B schools to hire. And the hypothesis that they have is that because GMAT requirement was waived, etc. So maybe that is why. I mean, it's just a hypothesis, of course, because they don't know exactly why. So look, so that is a perception. All right. Now, there is some logic to it, and I'll just discuss that. But then, and this is a conjecture on my part, I think that GMAT will become a lot more relevant going forward because there is logic to it. Now, listen to the logic. Look, when you prepare for GMAT, it's normally you do it over weeks and months and sometimes even years, right? So you are reading at that time, you are honing your reasoning skills, you are working on quant, so things that you did in school and college, you're reviewing all of that, and it gets you in that study mode. Your basics are reviewed and now they are clear. So when you get into the MBA school, then you can focus on the applications of these basics that you already know. In MBA school, you don't have much time, right? The time is limited. There are just so many things that you have to do, isn't it? You have to, network. You have to, of course, attend all the classes, then projects, then internships, etc. There's so much to do. You have limited time. If your basics are not, you haven't reviewed them in the recent times, then in that limited time, all you'll do is the bare minimum. but you end up doing a whole lot if your basics are well and truly in place, in case you've reviewed them in the recent times, right? So that is the reason why taking GMAT, working hard at it, and doing well at, your reading comprehension, because they require you to have good reading skills also. And those skills we know are something you're going to use not only in the school, but in the industry later on as well, in your job throughout, right? So then that is the reason why it does make sense that GMAT is important, and it could lead to better performance in school and in industry later on as well, right? Look, I mean, if you do well in GMAT, your basics are clear, you'll do better in your school, and then of course, then you will perform better in the industry. All right, so now, yeah, so of course, GMAT Focus is, okay, now the structure of GMAT Focus, it's become even more reasoning based. Look, do not try to evaluate what is going to come in GMAT Focus based on our knowledge of, what was there in classical GMAT. Things are going to be a little, I mean, of course, some topics are not there, right? But then there are no boundaries. In fact, they never were. GMAT never really gave us boundaries that these kind of questions are going to come, but these kind are not GMAT-like questions, right? But then those boundaries are even, I mean, more and more those boundaries are going away. More and more you are seeing that GMAT is basing its selection of questions on reasoning alone. Like, for example, I'll tell you, I was going through the verbal guide of GMAT Focus, yeah? Look, I have it over here, the verbal guide of GMAT Focus. And here they have given you the various types of critical reasoning questions, and they talk about the construction questions, right? So on page 45, they have specifically mentioned that. They have said that they're talking about the assumption questions, and they mention that, that these kind of questions could be necessary assumption, or it could be a sufficient assumption, right? And normally, what do we say, that sufficient assumption is something that comes in LSAT, but hey, look at that. They have mentioned in their official guide as well now. That sufficient assumption, that those words are there in your official guide, right? So most certainly you can get questions on that, isn't it? Like that, there are a few other things as well in GMAT Focus, which, and of course, you have data insights, and that's also very industry relevant, isn't it? Because once you're in a job, you'll regularly, every day, you'll see those graphs, you'll see PPTs with all those pie charts and tables and everything. And you will have to use your reasoning skills to figure out the data, what it represents, and etc. So all those things, obviously. Okay. Yeah. And again, now, GRE, if you discuss GMAT versus look, I'll take a separate video of all these things, perhaps. But then, if, in a very, very quick version, I would say that if you talk about GRE, then the issue is that they are not making the test industry relevant, even though they have shortened it and everything, great. But then still, for example, the verbal is going to be all about vocab, right? And we know that, let's say in business, in the industry, when you're talking to people, your communication should be clear, as unambiguous as possible, and easy for your listener to understand. Those are the basics. So you obviously can't use any fancy words in that, isn't it? So, I mean, why are they testing that? Why does it really make a whole lot of sense? And GMAT on the other side is moving towards becoming more industry focused. So then certainly, there are, I mean, advantages to that. In any case, that this is totally a different video. Other things. Now, yeah, so one quick word on Are We Prepared is the content of ANA Prep prepared for GMAT Focus. Mostly, yes. Look, this change hasn't happened overnight. As I said, GMAT has been moving towards reasoning-based questions, etc. So then we have been including things that are now clearly within the GMAT Focus boundary in our curriculum, and most of them are already part of it. There were two topics that were not. For example, CDs was not a part of the curriculum because it, we didn't really have series questions in GMAT. But then GMAT Focus content does have series also mentioned in the quant review. So that is why we have already included that. And then there is one topic of distribution of, because of course data insights is coming. So then measurement scales, and then frequency distribution. Normal distribution is already included in the statistics because you do get some quant questions on that in the classical GMAT also, but then we also have skew, etc. So we'll perhaps put those basics as well. Yeah. And we are putting new and new, more and more data insights questions every day. So we'll continue doing that for many months to come. Yeah.